Okay, so we left last meeting and we considered your offer, but we also went back and did a little bit of research on our own.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time watching the March 7th budget development meeting. And so what we did is we just, based on new information that we saw there, we are going to counter your proposal with this.
Now, the budget development meeting was with the council and finance.
Yes, council, finance,
okay,
HR.
Okay.
March 7th. March 7th.
Of this year.
Of this year.
Okay.
And as we're handing those out, did you get a chance to look over the minutes that Andrew sent you?
You know what, I'm sorry, I did not.
Yeah.
This is based off of HR's initial recommendation for how wages should be addressed for general employees at that meeting.
So you're asking for a 4.5% COLA and a 3.25% wage adjustment?
Which is what everyone that was under market would have received with your initial recommendation. 3.25 equals a step, and we are all under market.
Have you costed this out?
No.
Okay.
So one big difference is the budget presentation on the 7th that you were referring to. The city hybrid scale does not do COLAs. We do market adjustments.
The 4.5 would be the equivalent of a market adjustment.
Okay, well you have it listed as a COLA. The city does not do COLAs. So if you're referencing the 3.7 meeting, that is not what was presented.
4.5 was a market adjustment due to the inflation. I mean, it was CPI.
So you're calling it a market adjustment, or you're calling it a COLA?
We're calling it a COLA, but they're equivalent in our eyes.
And so you're equating the 4.5% as equal to the CPI increase for 2018?
The recommended CPI increase from HR initially was a 4.5, and that was an adjustment of their scale.
Actually, the presentation offered 3 options.
I
So
agree,
4.5 was not the original ask.
You presented 3, but HR's recommendation was the 4.5.
Yes, but that wasn't the original.
This is true, there were 3 options.
Okay. Anything else with respect to this?
Do you have any specific questions?
Not over and above what Heather and I have already asked.
Would you like a few minutes to talk about
Yeah,
it?
we're going to go caucus. The way it's set up now is that the camera runs continuously, doesn't shut off. So we have a notice to everybody that will sit in front that we're in caucus. But if you're in here, it's being recorded and live streamed. So beware, don't sit around and talk in here. So you can go back into the conference room you're at. We're going to go down to the legal conference room, and that's where we'll caucus.
Just since it was brought up to enter into the record, this is the agenda and the HR presentation for March 7th as presented to council. If you'll notice on the yellow tab page, HR's recommendation is a 2.5% increase. A 4.5 and a 6.1 was discussed, but that was not the official recommendation.
Anything else?
That is all.
Okay. We tried to, in the short period of time we had, to estimate the cost of your current offer. And it's in the ballpark of about $550,000 cost to the city. I note that because that's an average of about $6,400 per employee for the 86 employees that are within the fire. Now, your previous offer last week was costed out at about $320,000. So your new offer is $200,000 more than your previous offer. I find that to be bordering on, if not crossing the line of aggressive negotiations to bump up an offer almost 60%. Really without any justification. We were $175,000 apart before your new offer, and we're now about $375,000 apart. Our counters, we stand where we're at.
Our offer was based on new information that was from that meeting. Information that, I guess, that was new to us. We've asked for information from your side and haven't gotten it. And so we went through and watched that budget study session, and that's the basis for our offer. So are you guys saying that we're at impasse? Because we're solid on our offer.
No, I'm saying that our offer where we're at is what is in line with the 2.5% recommendation that was made by HR at that March 7th meeting. And so it's treating the general employees the same, treating the union the same as the general employees based upon the recommendation of HR. So I don't understand the new information. Taking a proposal, I think HR goes into those negotiation sessions with council with the hope that they can get as much traction with the council as possible to get as much increase as possible for the general employees, which clearly has an effect upon what can be paid to what I consider the three categories is the fire, the police, and the general employees. And so to take a proposal that HR would like to do, which was not accepted by council, and have that as being new information as a basis for an offer, I find disingenuous. I think you have to take, we're here today taking what the council has indicated the budget should be built on, and saying we're willing to do the same with you guys as we've been told to do with the general employees.
I believe it's disingenuous to ignore the fact that we're all under market like the other employees. And the employees who are under market in general employees are also getting a 3.25 because they're getting a step.
That hasn't been agreed to by council.
It was agreed to in that meeting.
The budget is
Not
being
agreed
built
to,
with.
that was recommended.
That was recommended.
Right, so that hasn't been agreed to. The budget is being built on 2.5.
And
So to say,
Yes,
yes,
but that does not mean that that is what will happen.
okay.
and the
Well,
other thing
you're
with
acting
it,
like it's a sure thing. It's
Yeah.
not.
it's not.
So how do you address that for us?
First off, you guys are at your market max, on your table max, because you have a singular step. You want to argue that, and I know. But your admins used to be on the same pay scale as our employees. They were at the table max. Therefore, your employees were at the max of the scale. Our employees at the max of our scale are not getting a step.
We are at the max of a table that was established in 1999. It's 20 years old, and at that time, there were 10 steps on your table that took 5 years to achieve.
Yes.
So we have not received adequate cost of living increases to keep that table up to date. And so it's completely unfair to characterize that as we're at the max.
You guys have chosen a singular step scale. There's one amount. Therefore, it's your max.
Which is why we're here trying to adjust it.
And our employees at max are getting just the table adjustment. They're also not getting a step.
We are below our market.
So are we.
And we are asking for the same thing that the people that our general employees are getting to help them take them to market.
No, you're not.
No, you're not.
No, you're not. You're basically saying you have to compare yourself to the status of the same type of general employee as you exist, as Heather says. So you have to look only at those people at the max. Okay, those people at the max are not getting a step.
We just spent a year going over compensation and establishing what our market was, and we are below market.
Okay, I'm not talking about market, I'm talking about the comparison.
We're talking market?
I'm talking about your concept of if general employees not at the max are getting steps, then you're entitled to
General
getting
employees
steps.
not at market are getting steps.
Okay, and even those people at the max, whether they're at market or not, are not getting steps. We're treating you exactly the same as the general employees that are at max that are not getting a step, because that's where you're at.
We are below market.
So
is
are
every-
people
We want to be,
max.
we want
So
to
is
be
everybody
treated like
else.
everyone else that's below market.
So is everyone else.
So why can't we get the same treatment?
You are.
Why
You're
can't
at
we
a
step
max, you're at a max, the max people don't get steps.
We're not 1999 max.
We're not at a.
You don't have a step schedule.
Exactly. That's why we're just asking.
So we're looking
3.25.
only at Schedule A as a change,
Exactly.
okay? And adding in the amounts you're talking about. Your average per person increase based upon your offer is at least double, if not triple, what the average increase would be for generals, including taking steps into consideration.
That's funny because that doesn't match up with the numbers that we saw. The numbers that were presented with the 4.5 was 1.6 million. If you average that out over the number of employees that it would affect, it's about $4,500. We are not double that.
But we are not building on a 4.5% increase. We are building on a 2.5. So you're using the wrong numbers.
2% is a big difference. When you're using wrong numbers.
So,
I think we watched the study session, and our take was most of the council members were in favor of at least 2.5, if not more, for all the general employees.
And at the end of that
We
study
feel like
session, it was very clear, it's a 2.5% build.
Okay,
That's what they
That is
voted to
what-
recommend.
that is what
But
we're
our
voting
take
on.
was that some of the council members were in favor of more than that.
But that's not what the budget is being built on.
You can build the budget on whatever you want.
yes, with the caveat that they can go up,
Yeah.
is what they
They
all
said we'll
say.
make that the
Every
floor
one
and
of
we
them
can
said
go
that's the
up
floor.
based on what comes out of this negotiation.
Did you watch the end?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're building on a 2.5,
which is the floor.
which is, no, that is not the floor.
That's what they said.
2.5 and a step.
No, that's not the floor, that's what it's being built on.
Right.
That is not a guarantee.
2.5 and a step.
They can take it away though. When
Sure.
we get to
Sure
tax
they can.
solution,
Sure they
they
can.
can say
understand
no,
that.
We understand.
no 2.5, no
But we're
step.
basing it on the information we got from their responses, from your guys' responses.
So you're basing it on information on what they said versus what they voted for.
Yeah.
We're
Because
basing
some
it
of
on
them
your
voted to approve
recommendation.
that,
Our
but said
recommendation
they would want to
on
go
the yellow
more.
tab is 2.5.
Sorry, to
And
use the wrong
Stop
word.
saying
I'm
that's our recommendation.
basing it off what you advocated for
Well,
at the
of
beginning of the
course we
meeting,
advocate.
and also basing it off of what the mayor advocated for during the discussion, and also, I lost my train of thought. It was going so well.
You know what, let's just take a caucus real fast. And, because all we're gonna do is run in there. Let's just take a caucus.
Sure. You got everybody?
You can start.
Okay.
You have anything for us?
You went into caucus.
Okay, so your offer averages a 1.73. And you're in currently
On the
building.
base, on the base only. Now, that did not.
It
take
averages a
in
1.73.
on the base, but that, and we talked from the very beginning that we're looking at the total cost issue. And the other increases that are generated by base increases add to that total cost, because the total cost issue with the general employees is the same. So the 1.73 to the base equates to really close to a 2.5% total cost increase.
How does that compare to our gross?
Your gross what?
Our gross wage? I'm not, if you give me a 1.73% increase, am I gonna take home 1.73% more money than I was before?
Not necessarily, depends on tax rate, depends on. all
No,
sorts
the
of different things.
1.73 doesn't apply to everything, so I don't truly get a 1.73% raise. And you're trying to say that a 1.73 equates to 2.5. You're comparing it to base wage rather than gross. Gross wage is what we take home, the only thing we can adjust is base.
Well, we're talking about Schedule A,
Right?
okay? And it's a 1.73% increase to Schedule A. Now, Schedule A increases other aspects of the contract. So what I'm saying is we're looking at a total cost to the city of 2.5. Now, to back out the other effects that increase.
2.5% of what?
If you would allow me to finish. Okay. Total cost of any change in Schedule A, we're trying to limit to 2.5%, the same way it is with the general.
2.5% of what?
If you will let me finish. Okay? It's an actual cost over and above what the total cost for each employee is to the city for the fire department. Now, you have to take into consideration all aspects of that. That's your clothing allowance, that's the step-up pay, that's the paramedic issues. Whatever they are, we can identify those. So we start with what change in the base on Schedule A equates to a total cost increase overall, to the overall cost to the city of those employees, and it's about a 1.73.
Compared to what? Because if you give me a 1.73 to base, then my wage, my take home, my gross wage does not go up by 2.5, period. I mean, we can keep talking circles about this, but my point that you didn't let me finish was that your offer was for a 1.73 average, and you're building a budget right now that totals at 5.8 for 82% of the employees that are below market. We are also below market. To be honest, you're offering us a third of what you're offering the other employees, and we don't think that's reasonable.
And we absolutely disagree. We're offering the same that the budget is built on.
If you didn't build the budget on trying to get us to market, then I'm sorry, you built the budget wrong. Because you're building the budget on trying to get them to market. You should also, we spent a year going through and comparing comps to try to figure out what our market is, and our market shows that we're significantly behind our market.
By definition, any increase to salary is a attempt to get to market, because it does increase.
And you're doing
salaries.
5.8 for everyone else and offering 1.73 to us. You talk about fairness and about how you're trying to be equitable and you're trying to treat all employees fair. You're offering us less than a third of what you're offering everyone else.
And we absolutely disagree based on the max step issue that we talked a few minutes ago about.
Do you have the ability to, look, you're talking about a scale that's 20 years old. our market is our market. We are significantly behind our market. We need adjustment to get.
So is everybody.
And everyone else is getting adjustment.
Right.
We are not. We're asking for that same
And
adjustment.
there's only so much money.
Can you guys not afford our offer?
The $550,000 increase, I doubt that that can be absorbed by the city in any respect.
Can you show evidence to that?
We don't currently have numbers for valuation. So we don't really know how it's gonna affect our levy limitation. We do know that we are pretty close in the general fund, and we do know that the ambulance budget does not have a lot of room for their max for property taxes.
So on March 7th, you delivered 3 options for market adjustment, for adjustment to the wage scale as well as step increases. And you're telling me that none of those included compensation for us? Because that's a pretty unfair way to build a budget.
I don't negotiate for the fire union. We did build in the cost of the per se increase, and it increased to workers' comp. We also built in the additional cost of healthcare. Those were known numbers, so we included those. We didn't negotiate on your behalf. That would be taking away your right.
I understand, but you didn't present that with us receiving like numbers?
Why would I? We've never presented to assume what fire would be asking for.
Prudent planning, though, would say that your 3 options you presented would take into account the other 150 to 200 employees in the city are gonna also have some impact.
Which is why I told council that a 4.5 would not be reasonable if they wanted to look at a bigger number for the unions, so I asked them to go to the 2.5.
Yes, if they wanted to look at a bigger number for the unions, which stated right there. We're talking about looking just right in those things. Can you show any evidence those numbers you presented, that the costs you presented there make our offer unreasonable, unaffordable? It sounds like you don't have that evidence yet to say you can't afford
We
these.
haven't even started budget presentations, so we don't know we have no idea what departments need as far as operating goes. And so we don't know what we can actually afford for anything at this point until we get to tax solutions. So,
And I think we felt like the council was willing to make this a priority and build the budget around these kind of numbers coming from us and the other city employees.
but what will happen is if we get to a point where we get through budget presentations and the council decides to add things for operating purposes, because there are things that are actually needed because they're being spent. And we get to a point where we say, hey, you know what, the general fund's over their levy limitation. The first thing they're gonna cut is wages. They're gonna take that 2.5% and they're gonna cut it down. Or they're gonna take the step away, or they're gonna cut people,
But
or
they
say
have,
you
they have
can't
the
hire
ability to
people.
reallocate those excess reserve funds. That this is the first year you guys have been so flush in a
But
long
we
time,
can't
and they
use
have
them for operating.
the CFO states in the videos that they have the ability to utilize some of those funds in there. And all I'm saying is that you guys haven't presented any evidence to us to refute the fact that our offer is not a reasonable offer, like actual evidence.
Right, but we cannot use those reserves for people or for operating.
You
It
can't
only
use the
be used for
capital reserves.
No,
for-
we
and
cannot
you-
use general fund reserves for operating. We can't. It's against our policy.
We would like evidence to show that you can't afford this.
And
We feel like our offers
We
are
understand that the money that is set aside in those reserve funds is only for capital purchases. But the money that is diverted to those funds on an annual basis is not guaranteed to be required to be used for capital purchases until it's in that fund. And so there is excess that will be going into those funds, and that is what can be diverted, is my understanding.
I guess I don't understand.
In addition to that, the CFO talked about TIF retirements and talked about new construction money coming in. She spelled out where they had money to be able to spend. And if I remember right, you said, there's all that money. The bad news is I'm gonna tell you how to spend it.
And those numbers are not guaranteed. We can't prove those yet because we haven't hit that time of the year.
So how can you prove that you can't afford?
Well, we could look at the ambulance levy from last year, and we could, or see if they took the full 3%, but even that is going to be very rough.
And how do you address the fact that your offer is a third of what you're budgeting right now for other employees that are in a like situation,
I
that are
completely
below their
disagree
market?
with saying it's a third.
1.73 is less than a third of 5.8.
That's your interpretation.
We are below market, just like everyone else.
Yes, we are all below market. I agree with that.
It's being addressed with other employees, but not with us.
How do you figure?
They are getting a step increase, which equates to 3.2%. That's what we're asking for, in addition to the market adjustment.
So a market adjustment, or on your sheet, you've listed it as a COLA at 4.5, which is not what the general employees are being billed off of. How do you just explain that discrepancy?
The two different scales is the equivalent.
So we don't have any ad pays that increase off of a COLA because we don't do COLAs. You have 5 charts. So 4.5 is much greater than 4.5. Please don't interrupt. Longevity on a COLA per the contract increases as long as it's called a COLA. So 4.5 is automatically adjusting longevity, clothing, holiday, and paramedic pay. That far exceeds 4.5.
So give us a reasonable offer back, or show you can't afford it.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk for a few minutes. Questions? We all here? Excellent. What we tried to do in the caucus is to make a good faith estimate of the amount of new revenue that's estimated for this year from last year, and also then the known additional expenses that have to be included in this year's budget, and then a list of the unknown expenses, such as the amount of the fire salary increase, police increase, inflationary issues concerning operational, new personnel requests and increases, so that we can track through and show that there's more claims against the new revenue than the value of the new revenue. And so you can see where your $550,000 request, which would come out of that new revenue, fits in. So if Ashley can explain what the total estimated new revenue is and any caveats that relate to that.
Okay, so when we presented on March 7th, the general fund, based on a levy limitation of 0.009, we cannot go above that levy limitation, okay? It's based on the valuation, the market valuation, which has remained fairly static over the last 5 years. The available amount to the general fund would be $1,758,771. If we do get to that 0.009, the problem that you run into is your valuation doesn't increase or increase slightly or decreases, you cannot do anything in that next year. You probably have to cut, okay? So we have available about 1.7 million in the general fund, and Heather's gonna go over what's already kind of been committed to that. But if we do get to that levy limit, we could run into some serious problems, because we know we're always gonna have medical insurance increases. That's a given every year. So once you get to that point and you can't go above that levy limitation, you're cutting. So I just want you guys to be aware that's what happens when you bump right up to that levy limit. So Heather's gonna go over kind of what
So just based on the presentation that I handed from March 7th, we used the numbers on there so that you had a working copy. We broke it down between general fund and the other funds, so we can just talk about general fund costs. So the 2.5 bill with the one step comes in at 441,000. I'm gonna kind of just roll that a little so we don't have to go through the exact numbers. The city benefit increase is 204,000. We're estimating fire at 108,000. Percy for everybody in the general fund, including police and fire at current rates, is 111,000, which comes out to $865,000. What that doesn't include is workers' comp, which there has been an increase in what we're doing there. We still have to address police, fire, operational, and interfund increases, which comes out, the ones that we listed is a 1.5 million. So that other 200,000 police, fire, operational, and interfunds would affect.
And what are interfunds?
So interfund charges are, we have certain departments like the fuel fund that they actually just charge somebody, and so we calculate those after council decides what they want their budget to be to make sure that they're kept whole. Also like IT, so IT charges people based on like how many computers and stuff they have, and so those interfund charges are calculated after they present their budget because council can decide to give them additional operating money, and so we have to build that in because we basically keep all those interfunds whole.
Okay. When you talk about operational, are you talking about new employee requests as well?
No, in the 1.5, I included new employee requests, which this year sit at just around 650,000.
So you add the 650,000 to the 865.
Yes, for the 1.5-ish. Now, these are all just rough estimates based on what we presented March 7th.
So that basically leaves then, the way I see it, of about $200,000 of the maximum new revenue to pay for the fire increases, police increases, operational increases, and the interfund increases, plus the workers' comp increases.
Correct.
So if you add the 550 requested by the fire to those numbers, then we're at over $2 million, and there's gonna have to be $300,000 taken out of someplace from everybody else in order to pay for that.
The other big issue that we don't have as good of numbers on is the ambulance, because that's a separate fund written out of the county. Usually, we see about 100,000 in new revenue. The benefit increase is set up at 40,000, so that means you have 60,000 in that fund.
And the proposal is a cost
Roughly
increase of 130?
38.
So you're about 80,000 then short within that of meeting those requirements based upon your offer.
So how come, if you look at the market adjustment that you tabbed, how come you've got other funds that are in there that are, I mean, you're talking about 441K increase from the general fund, but you've got a total increase of 1.16.
We were just talking about the general fund increase, because that's
Fire
where
is
it's
in the
housed.
general fund.
The other funds have no impact on what we can allot to you. Enterprise has to stay with enterprise.
Got it.
How many employees are on that general fund?
No, that's, I'd have to break it out. I don't have that handy with me right now. I mean, I can rough guess it.
It's about 330,
Well,
right?
that's everyone,
That's
just take
total.
enterprise out. So you're talking about 40-ish at water, 35-ish at sanitation. I don't know, we'd have to look that. I don't have that just on my fingertips.
Yeah.
Can we get it?
Not this exact moment,
I
but
know,
yes, we'll
but
definitely get you the information. Do you have any?
I have it. I'm just gonna look it up online. It's actually in the budget document for last year. The one that I gave you?
Yeah, I can go through.
Right, we'll grab mine. Okay, let me go grab that, because I do have it.
That's why she's doing that. That's why our offer of a cost of about $135,000, fit within the parameters of the new revenue that the chief estimated with the ambulance side of things, and also uses up a large amount of the roughly $200,000 that's there. Now, the $650,000 for new employees, probably all those employees aren't going to get hired. And I think that's one of the decisions that the council always makes in trying to figure out how do we balance everything once all the better numbers are in. But even if just half of those, you're talking about $300,000 that is going to be hired as new expenses, and that leaves about $300,000. So you go to the excess of 135 is a third of that. We have to deal with police plus operational inflationary issues, and kind of breaking it up as a third was kind of our rough estimates.
So there's 289.75 people in the general fund. We take out the 68 in fire and roughly 93 in police sworn. That leaves you with 129. I rounded up to the quarter persons. Yeah, but they're not included in that one cost. This is yeah.
Excuse me, thanks.
Right, so run that by me again. You said 284.75 in the general fund?
Just so you know where we're taking it
289.
from. This is the budget book that was presented last year, so those are the numbers that we're using.
So it's based on budgeted positions, so.
And that's total budgeted positions in the general fund.
Correct.
Yes.
So after that, you take out fire.
And police
And you
sworn.
take out police. So, and what would the number on police sworn be?
We think it's about 93, because they added 3.
65 fire.
68.
What would it be?
Because the others are.
Oh, because the others are ambulance, gotcha.
We're trying to make sure
So,
we don't.
There's 22 ambulance and 68 fire.
So what you're saying, is that to get those remaining 129 employees to where you want to get them, you're spending $441,000.
Roughly, yes.
I'd like to take a second to talk.
Sure. I think we're scheduled until 1 o'clock today. Okay.
Okay, so first off, we'd like to request hard copy of the information that you pulled those numbers from.
You have it.
All right, we have it. It's all built into this.
Employee count and everything.
The employee count is in the FY19 budget document, which is online.
Okay,
Should be in the Archive Center budget book, and it should be the FY19 budget book. It's towards the very, very back. It's authorized staffing, is what it's called.
okay. Could we also get the cost breakdown from our offer that you guys put together?
Our estimate,
Yes, the cost breakdown estimate that you guys put together.
a hard copy of it.
Please.
We'll have to work on that. Because
Electronic copy would be fine too.
It's the same thing. It's just making sure that we double check. We'll get that to you.
Is it noted in that presentation which of those employee requests are directly affecting the general fund?
Yes.
In the finance presentation, yes. There's like a slide for general fund, and then there's a slide for other funds.
Okay, but not in the one that we ever.
Not in the HR presentation.
We don't
Yeah,
have the finance.
we didn't get the finance one. It wasn't included on the agenda.
Who do you want me to email? Who do you want me to email it to?
Scott Loeffler.
Okay, I will do that right now.
Thank you. So with that being said, based on 129 general employees and an increase of 441,000, but only leaving 200,000 on the table for 161 employees. The breakdown is that you budgeted 3,425 for general employees, and you left an average of 1,242 for police and fire. And
I disagree with that representation.
what do you, how?
Okay, the 441, I think is a fair representation from the standpoint of 129, because the budget is being worked with the 2.5 plus the step, okay? But that, as we've discussed before, is not guaranteed. That is a hope, but once you bring in all of the other unknown amounts at this point in time and compare them against the new revenue, I think there's a decided pressure that is going to reduce that amount. It's also going to reduce the potential of hiring new employees. And so these aren't set in stone things that says that we only budgeted this amount. We look at the total amount, we look at this knowing that it's not set in stone and saying what is the size of the other pieces that we can do to ultimately put into the budget to make it all balance.
I'm sorry, I must have misspoken, but you're building the budget based on those numbers, correct?
Right, but there has been
You
no
are
agreement.
building the budget based on
That's
those
correct.
numbers.
That's correct.
And what you've done is for 161 employees, you've left less than half of that amount on the table.
So a little caveat, when new positions are listed, at the beginning of the budget cycle, we show council what the recommendations are. It is up to each department to advocate for those during their budget meetings, their
They're not
council.
built in.
Those have not started yet, so we don't know which of those they will offer.
All I'm pointing out
And I'm
is
pointing
how
out that
unfair.
departments have to fight for that. It's no different than you coming in.
The part that, Andy, the part that's correct is that the 441 for those 129 employees was the budget building. The rest of the calculation that we took into consideration is what we are anticipating possibly being presented to council. That's not, you're assuming that because of that, we left 200 on the table for that many employees. And that's we're just accounting for everything. So it's a little bit of a different perception on what's happening.
So is it reasonable to say though that you budgeted $3,425 for general employees? That's part of the budget build. So we're trying to be reasonable. We don't want any more than we're entitled to. We would like to have comparable numbers. I mean, I think that your side needs to try to put something together that is closer to being even. You've talked about fairness, and what's been offered is not fair.
Now, there's a difference between what we can agree to on this table and get ratified both by the council and by your membership. That then becomes a number that can't change. That number then is placed into the budget and is set in stone once that happens. Now, that has to be done well before all of the other items that bear upon the new revenue can be established. Now, what that basically does then is that even if there's a 441 placeholder in the budget for general employees, when the dust ultimately settles and the council has decided that they want to hire this many new employees, they have to comply with the two unions' agreements. The downward pressure, as you can tell by the numbers, is going to be to reduce that 441 potentially substantially. So that's a placeholder. That is not if that was locked in stone the way you want your agreement to be locked in stone, I have more agreement with you. But this is a placeholder so that we can build the budget, and it's nothing more than that.
So we would like an offer that's similar to what that placeholder is.
Well, we've given you the offer that we think works and what we think will ultimately be equating to that placeholder.
And we disagree strongly with that number.
I understand that.
So where do we go from here?
We may have a little flexibility, but we don't have much at all. In fact, you went up $200,000. I'm not going to place anything more on the table until you come back below your, or at least to your previous offer. And if you think it would be appropriate, we would suggest mediation. Bring Darrell Clark back in.
Certainly seems like the divide is too much, and maybe that's the best route to go at this point.
Okay? You want me to make the call to Darrell and see what his availability is?
Sure.
Okay. And I'll email him and email you, so you're in that loop. If that works for you.
Okay.
Okay. And I don't know what his availability is, but I will email him today. I'll my phone in 2 minutes and find out.
So at this point, that means that we're canceling the meeting we have scheduled next week?
I would, yeah, because if he's able to show up next week, we've got it scheduled. Let's talk to him first to know what his schedule is.
Keep us in the loop.
Okay, I will include you on every email too.